Good morning, class. It's Mr. Stewart, and this is the beginning of week 7. So we have about 3 more weeks of class in the summer term, and you're going to be done. So here in week 7, we're again only looking at one chapter, and at this point, we're pretty much done with talking about the theories. You should have a handle on understanding a couple things about theories and crime causation. Number one is there's a lot of theories out there, and they all can explain some crime in some shape, form, or fashion. And number two, no single theory can explain every instance of crime in every context. So there's a lot of theories out there. They all explain some crime at some time, but no single theory can explain every crime at every time. You should also kind of have a handle on what some of those major types of theories are and what some of the sub-theories or subsets of those theories are at this point. It's important in the study of criminology to understand the theories, because what we typically do is we'll look at a crime and then we'll try to apply the theory of crime causation to that crime. Why did this person commit this crime at this time? And we can try to use a particular theory to do that. One of the things that I have taught for years, and we see that this is arising out of the research now, is that really we use more of an integrated approach to looking at theories of crime causation, in that even a single crime could be the product of several different theories at work. Because people are human, we have a lot of variability in us, we have human nature, and we do things for a variety of reasons. I mean, think about this. Think about going and getting something to eat with your friends. Yes, you go eat because you're hungry. That's one reason why you go eat, but you also go get something to eat with your friends because it's a social event. It's a time to catch up. It's a time to visit. Maybe you go get something to eat with some of your friends because you're bored. There's a lot of different reasons, and they all could be working simultaneously to cause you to behave in a certain way. So when we try to explain crime, I think we need to be explaining crime that same way, using kind of a combination of, or what we call integrated theory, that says maybe one particular theory explains it more than the rest, but there's probably more factors involved in explaining that criminal behavior than simply one single theory. It's probably multiple theories or multiple parts of multiple theories working simultaneously and all together to try to explain that particular crime in that particular context. So I just want you to try to get that in your mind and think about that from this point forward. Like I said, we're kind of done with theories. Chapter 10 begins to look at actual crime and look at some of the causation for those particular crimes. So chapter 10 has to do with violent crime and kind of its personal and its political roots of violent crime. Now, violent crime is any crime in which the potential exists for harm, injury, or death to occur, or a crime in which force is used to exert that crime. Many people think burglary is a violent crime. Burglary is a property crime. It's about somebody's property, and the potential for harm, injury, or death, or the use of force to engage in that criminal act against someone doesn't exist in burglary, but it does in robbery. Whereas robbery means somebody's there, you take something by force. And a lot of times we see some people are killed during robberies. So you see the potential is there for, at least the potential is there for injury, harm, or even death. So that's what differentiates violent crime from other crimes. And there are several specific crimes that fall into the violent crime category, like murder, like rape, like robbery, like assault. And in many states, we also consider arson to be a violent crime because the potential is there for harm or loss of life when you intentionally set something on fire too. Some places still look at arson as a property crime, but a lot of places now look at arson as also a violent crime, and it carries with it a lot of the same punishments that many other violent crimes do. So this chapter is really pretty straightforward. And I mean, I'm not really going to go into detail in the lecture here because you need to read this chapter. It talks about the causes of violence. I'm going to talk about the two types of violence here in just a minute, but it goes into some of the causal factors of violent behavior, and then it goes into some of those crimes like murder, like rape, and it talks about the types of rape. It talks about the connections between rape and the law. Again, it talks about murder. There's several different degrees of murder. I want to make sure that you look at that. It also differentiates between mass killings and spree killings and serial killings. Make sure that you're familiar with those terms. It's all straightforward. It's in your text. I mean, you're going to have to read the text in this one because there's a lot of information in this chapter. It also talks about assault, child abuse, child molestation. It talks about hate crimes, the difference between kind of general violence and interpersonal violence. And finally, the chapter kind of concludes with talking about terrorism, which is actually a pretty new addition to what we would consider to be violent crime here in the United States. We never really even considered us to be the victim of terrorism until the first time that the World Trade Centers were bombed prior to 9/11. Some of you may not even be aware that the World Trade Centers were bombed previously. Was not nearly as catastrophic as it was on 9/11/01, but it did happen. We've also had some domestic terrorism in this country with Timothy McVeigh, the Oklahoma City bombing, etc. But that's kind of where we are at this point. We do look and consider terrorism to be a violent crime, and we answer that and explain terrorism depending upon the type of terrorism it is, whether it's domestic or international, with a different particular theory in each one. Although some of the basic roots remain the same. So I do want to talk here for just a couple minutes, and then I'm gonna get off here this morning and let you get into the material. But I do want to talk about two different types of violence, because the type of violence that someone is engaging in is really indicative of why they're doing it, and maybe even the theory that we use to explain their violent behavior. The two main types of violence are called expressive violence and instrumental violence. Expressive violence really is an expression of their emotion at the time the violent act is happening. It typically is the product of rage, anger, or frustration. They're venting, basically. It's an expression. It doesn't mean that person is that way. That just may be their response to whatever situation that they found themselves in, or it's a frustration response to the fact that things just aren't going right for me, and this is the only way I know how to vent. Some people are like that. I've seen people get mad and frustrated about something and vent by going outside, taking a baseball bat to a tree, and that's how they vent. As opposed to, I have worked lots of domestic violence cases where somebody was frustrated with their relationship, and the way they vented was beating up on their spouse. It was an expression of the emotional state at the time. And I think we can explain a lot of violence under this idea that it is an expression. It doesn't mean that's who that person is. That's the way they are. It's just their frustration, or what we would consider to be kind of a stress response to the situation that they found themselves in. Now, the other type of violence is called instrumental violence. And this is where people are doing or engaging in violent behavior on purpose in order to obtain a particular work product at the end. It is violent acts that are designed to improve the financial or social position of the criminal. Some people fight other people because they like it. Maybe because they figure it's going to get them higher on that social ladder. Some people engage in violent behavior because maybe they're going to gain something from it, whether it be social position or social capital, or they're going to get something financially from it. You know, look, I have to think about for a minute about professional boxing. Professional boxing is it basically is instrumental violence. Those people are fighting other people. Now, understood that they're fighting using established rules and regulations, but it's a fight. They are engaging in violent behavior for financial reward. If you think about Ted Kuklinski, Kuklinski, Kuklinski. Ted Kuklinski was known as the Iceman, and he was a hitman for the organized crime of the mafia out of New York City from the 60s up into the 80s, late 80s. And Ted Kuklinski, the Iceman, liked to engage in violent behavior. If you looked at him wrong, he would fight you. If you made him mad, he would kill you. And that was just who he was and what he was about. And it was not an expression for him. That was who he was. So he was engaging in instrumental violence. Whereas a lot of times somebody who flies off the handle because of a financial situation or because they're frustrated with a relationship are engaging in expressive violence. So make sure that you are aware of those two different types of violence, because depending upon the type of violence that a person is engaging in, we would explain that criminality differently. We would probably use a different theory to explain the criminality dependent upon the type of violence that they were engaging in. So please read chapter 10. Make sure you are continuing with your usual weekly assignments, and if anybody has questions, problems, or concerns, please reach out. I'm here for you. I'll be in discussion boards, and I'll be getting some grading done this week as well. So have a good week, guys. If you have any questions, problems, or concerns, reach out. I'll talk to you next week. Bye-bye.